Broadcasting from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk where facts matter. Welcome to The Gailey Show, the only daily LGBTQ radio news and talk show in the United States. I'm your host, John Parker. Today is our weekly Thinking Clearly, Thinking Queerly episode, where we sit down with a guest for the episode to help us think more clearly and more queerly on the major issues of the day facing the LGBTQ and allied community. Coming up after us, because there's a lot going on, get ready for the best in progressive news and analysis with the Matt McNeil Show on AM 950 and Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820. Today, we're going to clear up a few things about trans athletes. My guest is Brianne Brinker. Brianne is a former NCAA Division I men's hockey goalie and coach. She publicly transitioned in her 50s while serving as assistant athletic director at Union College. Her new memoir is Skating Out of the Vault, which comes out on September 16th. It explores identity, love, and resilience. Brianne is a speaker and advocate who coaches players of all ages, and plays for Team Trans, reigniting her hockey passion. Brianne, welcome to The Gailey Show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
All right. So Division I hockey, one doesn't just wake up one morning and decide to play it. Talk to us about your passion for that sport that you developed early in life.
Well, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and I fell in love with the St. Louis Blues. I went to a game before I even started playing hockey. I was skating a little bit, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It happened to be a game that got the team into the playoffs. Everybody was pounding, jumping on the goalie at the end. I just had a thing. I just thought that the goalie looked like the most important part of the team to me. Every time they made a save, there was cheers. Every time, the end of the game. So I wanted to be a goalie, and I loved it. And it was something I looked forward to all the time. The practices, and like a lot of kids, like most kids at that age, at 7, 6 years old, I want to be a pro. I want to be that. We had the St. Louis Billikens at the time, the college team in St. Louis, and I used to go to those games, and I enjoyed that as much as I did the Blues. And I wanted to play at that level. I wanted to play the highest level I could possibly do. And the Billikens folded, and I had a chance to play at Kent State University, and so that's been they've since dropped the program, as did St. Louis U. But it was just a great experience. We were in the, we ended up, it was a growing program when I was there, but it was hockey. It was daily. It was, a daily grind, but I loved it. I never wanted to quit. I just wasn't good enough for the next level. And then I went on to a coaching career. So I was coaching.
Yeah, tell us about what that's like then. Kind of peel back the curtain of what being a goalie is like in Division I. And I'm asking that because I want to set the stage for your book and the questions that are going to be coming up here. But What is that like as a player in D1 as a goalie in hockey? Because also you're in Minnesota. I mean, hockey's, all things here. So
of course, yeah, and everybody, each time you take a step up a level, whether it be youth hockey to high school to college, whatever it is, or juniors to college, it's a new level, and you've got to prove yourself all over again. And some people just have that skill and everything. They can just get that done right away, and others have to really, really work and grind. And I was one of those really, really had to work and grind. But it's something, every day you got to go at it. Because there's only one net as a goalie. There's 6 defense slots. Everybody wants one of those, but the odds are a little bit different that you're going to get ice time. But if you're not top goalie, sometimes you don't get to play much at all. And that was something that I did not want to do. I did not want to sit. I did not want to, because those are games and minutes and blocks of time that you can't get back. Yeah. And that's why I looked at it. And I said, I'm going to, go at it. And, I was fortunate enough to be able to get a lot of ice time. I wasn't in every single game in juniors and in college, but I quite a bit. I was able to to play enough and establish myself. And I had been inducted to the Kent State Athletics Hall of Fame recently, and recently is 2016. But it took a while. It took a while, but it was okay. I mean, it was just so I had a very, very satisfying career. I loved it. Made friends, had things with the guys, but and actually my best friends from those things were usually the goaltenders. We spent a lot of time together, and when if I was in, they would support me in a big way, and if they were in, I would support them in a big way, and we just we had a great camaraderie like that.
We're talking with the author of the forthcoming memoir, Skating Out of the Vault, Brianne Brinker. Brianne, I imagine, and in the book it's a game of masculinity on multiple levels. Can you begin to unpack that for us? What do you mean by a game of masculinity?
Well, there's always, hockey's, people, the first thing, if people don't know anything about hockey, the first thing is, hey, you get a lot of fights. They talk about the fights. Yeah, I went to a game and there was a fight and this and that. And, but it's always, the tough part. And back in those days, that was before, the NHL and then, college USA hockey cracked down on a lot of the, the violent stuff and the fights and the checks from behind and different things like that, and made it more of a skill game and things like that. But it's still a grueling experience, and you need to be tough. You need to be, you've got to have that grit. And we were told, at least I was told through the coaches that worked with me and mentored me, that you got to be the mentally strongest person there. And I wasn't the most physical strongest, but I was, you had to be the toughest, because people are, they weren't really protecting goalies back in those days. I mean, people would run in and, like there's, I still remember, like when I was in juniors, there was no crease rule, like it was just, there was, you just get it, if people are in the crease, whatever, you're in. So we were taught to, you got to be and act and appear tougher than the rest, than your opponents, because if they see anything that you are soft at, or any type of vulnerability, they're going to exploit that. And that's what we're taught. So it's just it is a masculine. It's something that you're always it's just always ingrained. You got to be tough. And then there's the stuff the language, in the locker room or on the bench. Take your effing skirt off, hit the guy, put the purse down and hit the person, and, all those kinds of things that you hear, and it goes in one ear out of the other for most people, and some people it didn't, like I was one, but it wasn't like I was going to say, hey, don't say that. I was in hiding. I wasn't going to expose myself at all. And I got caught up in the whole thing too, so there's just always that the language, there's just always the calling each other any names to think you're a sissy or a girly or things like that, and in those days, John, there was nobody like girls hockey wasn't as established. I knew my hockey career would be over if I ever tried to move out at that point. But then we didn't have the language for it. So I just stepped forward and I just locked everything inside. And that's where the metaphor of the vault comes from, is a closet, you can open the door and you can let yourself out. When you're ready, out you go. And you can make your way and you can dip your toe into whatever you need to do. But I locked myself in a vault where I could not tell a single soul, not a parent, not a friend, not anybody. And that was a big, big deal. And that's where I came up with that. I just feel like I can't let myself out from the inside. Somebody from the outside's got to let me out, and it's got to be safe enough. So I felt safe in there. The me that you see right now. So that's pretty much where it is, and it's kind of getting rid of all the machismo. Mm-hmm. And once that happened, and even in, I was coaching college hockey and coaching juniors, and you kind of even spread that and teach that in those days. So that's kind of where that comes from, and it's something that I just think that I was able to finally get over, after years and years and years and years.
Yeah. Your book is about identity, resilience, and late in life transition. Can we start with the identity part of that? What can readers expect when they read your memoir about how you're thinking about identity and how you're thinking about yourself? You're beginning to mention that in your time in D1 hockey. How are you understanding yourself and your identity, and how do you explain that in the book?
It was really difficult, and I think the easiest way for me to explain it was I was watching, like 5 years old, and this is in the 71, 72, like early age. We had 4 channels or 5 channels at home, and the stuff on after school was in black and white, the Leave It to Beaver or I Love Lucy or those kinds of things. And one was The Adventures of Superman. And I still remember this, and you see things like you're watching these shows, and you superimpose yourself into one of those characters and things like that. And of course, I wanted to be Superman. I wanted to be the toughest person. I wanted to save everybody. I wanted to be the world's conqueror. But then there's also something in me that said, Lois Lane, that's who I want to be. I want to be the person that gets saved. I want to be the beautiful person that people, that people are attracted to, and different things like that. And that was very, very confusing to a 5-year-old, 6-year-old. But I knew that we didn't have the language for any of this right now, but I knew the gender roles. My dad was a construction worker. My mother was a stay-at-home mom at the time. I knew, she did all the banking and the cooking and the laundry and all that stuff. I knew the gender roles, and I knew that I was a little boy, and that just wasn't going to cut it. And so, and I didn't also. I thought, I figured, I knew it was, quote, wrong, for that, and I kept it inside, and I knew I couldn't tell a soul, and that lasted for 50 years, and until I finally started to be able to get out there and meet some people. And
that vault. We're going to keep talking about that. We are speaking with Brianne Brinker about her upcoming memoir. I've got to fit in a quick break here. You are listening to The Gailey Show on AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 20, Chicago's progressive talk. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. We are coming up on the bottom of the hour. This is our weekly Thinking Clearly episode, where we sit down with a guest to take a deep dive into an issue facing the LGBTQ and allied community. My guest is Brianne Brinker. Brianne begins her 22nd season as a member of the Union College staff this fall. As the assistant athletic director, she manages events for all Union men's and women's ice hockey contests, which includes scheduling, operations, and programming at the department's athletic facilities. Her new memoir, Skating Out of the Vault, Skating Out of the Vault, comes out on September 16th. Brianne, you were talking about very early on understanding the sense of not being able to come out, and this identity part of your memoir. It seems like the idea of the vault that you talk about also developed really early on as well for you.
100%. I like I said, I knew something was, quote, wrong with me or different about me, and I never heard anybody else talk about any of this. Mm-hmm. And as I got older, I started to, we watch TV and different things. You see stuff. The National Enquirer was a big deal, and we'd go to the store with my mom and all that stuff. And one of the people, Caroline Crossy, and her model name was Tula. I don't know if you recall this person, but she was in a Bond movie, not as the main character, but she was in a Bond movie, and she was pretty popular. And what happened was she transitioned as a teen, but she was outed by paparazzi in England. She's English, and she was in England, I should say, but she was just, she was beautiful. She was successful, and then her it just seemed to appear to me that her world came crashing down. Like back then the Carson show was the only show on at late night, and she was on that, and she just had to, answer to all this type of stuff. And then she ended up doing Playboy. She was just a champion, quite honestly. But oh my God, the crap she went through, and just the jokes, and then people talk about the guys in my world were talking just all kinds of bad, mean, different things. And so I knew, like, oh my God, I don't think I can handle this right now. I don't think I could, but I figured. But then I wanted to be her, like I wanted to be. That's what I thought I could do, but I never thought I could do it. And so as you went along, you see some of, like Ace Ventura, some of these movies, and the trans person are the butt of jokes. The whole movie goes, and it turns out to be trans, and people are throwing up. And there's a Simpsons episode, same thing. And so it was just, it was. I'm sorry, Silence of the Lambs. Yeah, I mean, they're always the freak show, and it was really, really, again, that's just, just more, just more, they're just more evidence that. I can't do this. I'm not ready for this. The world I lived in, I would be ridiculed. And as I was getting older, I was realizing, like people who were considered queer or maybe were queer, they were getting beat up at school and different things like that. And there was really a bad situation. I didn't want any part of that. I wanted to be, I wanted to fit in, although I didn't necessarily always feel like I fit in, but I did not want to be shunned. I did not want my life to be over and completely changed like that. I wanted to, I also played, Little League baseball, and I played soccer, different things like that. But the hockey thing was the thing. And as I got older, nothing was going to stop me from that. And I mentioned before, there wasn't a lot of girls hockey at that time. I knew my career would be over. There's just no, at least from my vantage point in the Midwest, there wasn't a lot of women's hockey programs going on. I actually was coaching at University of Findlay when I got the job, and it seems like women's hockey almost doubled at that point in time, in the late 90s, 2000s. It just started to explode, and but it wasn't anything like it was, it is now. And I knew I had to stay the course and just deal with what I'm dealing with.
We're talking with Union College's Assistant Athletic Director, Brianne Brinker, whose new memoir, Skating Out of the Vault, drops September 16th. Brianne, what's resonating with me right now, kind of this distinction that you're making between the closet and the vault, is like, I'm Armenian American, and my Armenian side of the family, I feel like that's happening. Like, there's the closet with the American side where you just sort of, okay, come out and there it is. But with the Armenian side, like, you literally stop being Armenian if you come out as queer. Like, your whole world ends. And I think that is that's what's sort of resonating with me. I don't want to like put words in your mouth or like, say, but it's just, to me, that distinction of the vault being, if you come out of the vault, it does feel like apocalyptic. Like your world is just done. It's over. And then what do you do? It's
I didn't see a future. Like I didn't see, I looked at it from, my, 7th, 8th grade, high school, even college. And I wanted to be a coach after that. I didn't see a future had I making that step. And here's the thing. I knew it would only take one comment. It would just be, hey, I got to get this out. I got to tell somebody. And I tell that somebody, and that person spreads it around. I'm done. And I could not allow that. And I just would not tell a single soul about it. And I went on being playing the role of a dude who is, somewhat trying to be tough, or, I don't know, trying to be in charge or whatever the case is. But I did what I had to get through. On the other hand, I met my wife, who became my wife, and we were together 32 years before she passed. And we were just, I wanted to be a parent. I didn't think I could be a parent as a trans person or come out. I didn't think that was even going to be allowed. and I didn't even check on it when I was earlier. It just wasn't something I ever even thought would even be able to be a possibility. So I just didn't see a path forward, and it was until probably oh God, the past decade, maybe 2010 or something like that, and moving forward, where they're starting to see people that were, rising to stardom. RuPaul was one of them, who really started to be famous, and then there's other people that started to, was there, and so I started, once social media started. Then I thought, okay, there's more of this stuff now, and I'm not the freak show I thought I was. I felt each time I saw another show, another person, I felt more normal, and I figured there's something I had to do. And then now that I had that knowledge, I couldn't wait. Like I had to wait, but I had to do this right, and I had to be positive, and I had to do it in such a way that I wouldn't lose my job. I wouldn't lose my family.
Right. I'm sorry. I have to fit in another break here.
Sure.
This conversation and this show would not be possible without our advertisers and sponsors. Shop with them, do business with them. Tell them that you heard about them on The Gailey Show on AM 950, KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk where facts still matter. More after the break. From the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. Welcome back to The Gailey Show, the only daily LGBTQ radio news and talk show in the United States. I'm your host, John Parker. It is 33 minutes after the hour. It is our weekly Thinking Clearly, Thinking Queerly episode, where we sit down with a guest for the episode to help us think more clearly and more queerly on the major issues of the day facing the LGBTQ and allied community. With me today is Brianne Brinker. Brianne is the former NCAA Division I men's hockey goalie and coach. She publicly transitioned in her 50s while serving as assistant athletic director at Union College. Her new memoir, Skating Out of the Vault, comes out September 16th. It explores identity, love, and resilience. Brianne is a speaker and advocate who coaches players of all ages and plays for Team Trans, reigniting her hockey passion. Brianne, before the break, we were starting to talk about your transition and the milieu, if you will, of what was, helping to empower you to begin to think about doing that transition and then making sure you're doing it right. Can you sort of walk us through, for you, recognizing that for everybody it's different, what late in life transition can mean?
Late in life, it was terrifying, honestly. I had spent I've spent at that time, somewhere up in the upper 20 years in marriage. I was probably 15 years into a career in athletic administration, and I'm dealing with, I'm in a building with a college football team. I'm dealing with the coaches. I'm dealing with frat kids. I'm dealing with, a Division I hockey team. So there's all this, toughness and going on. And but now it's not like in a little corner of, I'm like aware of it now. Something's going to have to happen. And I stopped, I saw this, there's, couple things. I saw this now that the internet was going on. I ran into a story and it was her story. And it was like a 6-episode little thing, like 6 minutes each or something like that. It might have been 8 minutes each, something really small. And it was set in California, and it was about 2 trans women and their, I think there's only 6 people on the show, but 2 of them were trans, and it talked about their life and, and what their struggles were, but also what their successes were, and how they survived and how they thrived, throughout the course of that show. And I think I watched it in one afternoon. I mean, it was invigorating. I mean, we're talking 8-minute shows. So, but it was amazing. So I'm thinking, okay, yeah, it doesn't have to be, yeah, I don't have to walk out into chaos. That was a big part of it. And so I was able to see that. And then people like, somebody like Caitlyn Jenner comes out. And I disagree with Caitlyn Jenner on a lot of things, but the fact that, an athlete came out and as public as she did, that was a big deal. And that's when things were starting to, I started to be able to try to figure this out. The impetus for me to actually take the step, my wife had, she got diagnosed with cancer, colon cancer, and it had spread to her lymph nodes already by the time they caught it. And so the initial treatments cured it and tamped it down. But we also had in the back of our head that it may come back, but we're just going to do the best we can with the time. So that was probably an 8 to 10 month process. And I did whatever I could. But all the time, this stuff's getting more and more prevalent. I see Liver and Cox on our show. I see different people having success. And she gets diagnosed for a second time. And that's when I said, okay, it was terminal, both second opinion and everything. And we actually went to Boston to get the second opinion. And I'm flying back to Ohio. So I was working at camp at the time, and I was bawling. I don't cry a lot. And I said, I got to do something. And I knew something was going on with me, anxiety wise and things like that. I never addressed that, through years. So I did that. I called my mother on the phone. I said, do you have anything going on with that? She goes, yeah, just call your PCP and go from there. And I did. And I told her there's something else going on. And it's my gender. And she goes, oh, great. What is your, do you have a name picked out? Or, is there something else I could call you? I said, yeah, Brianne. And she changed it right on the spot. And she couldn't change the financial stuff. There are certain things, but whatever she could change, she changed it right on the spot. And she says, here, I'm giving you this. It's a referral for a social worker to talk about. And I had one phone call with the social worker, and she says, here, this is what you need. And it's the name of a counseling group that's in Albany that's what they do. They handle trans people. And it was just, then I was able to see them in secret. And by that time, I had been I had been working on myself and trying to figure out who I was, because back in the day, like I'm now going back to the, 70s, 80s, 90s, I didn't know what this was, and I didn't know how to find out. I mean, there's like porn or something like that, or magazines or something. There's really not much there. So I thought I might be a drag queen, because that's really the only representation I ever thought that I had, that I thought I could be. And I hate performing. I couldn't dance. I couldn't do anything. Right. I'm like, okay, this may not work, but I just wanted to try to figure out who I was. So I'd been doing that. And then I started trying to get into some safe spaces, maybe like some consignment shops, to buy a buy a blouse, buy something, and a pair of shoes that were more androgynous, or a pair of heels that I can hide away. And I always had a stash of clothes that I'd hide somewhere, whether it be under my desk, in the trunk of my car. There's always I had duffel bags everywhere. And after, I don't know, 10, 15 years of this, and it was insane. And finally I said, okay, something's got to happen. And so once she got diagnosed the second time, I knew I had to do something, and I did. I came out with the help of the therapist, and we put the plan together. And I knew that I had a good feeling that if I let my story out my way, in the sequence that it needs to come out, my wife needs to go first, and my family, and then my boss, and then the uppers, and then lower. We had it all planned out. And it's the most organized thing I've ever done in my life, because I'm not the most, I'm not known for being very meticulous, but there's too much at stake. And it was amazing. So it was really, really good. And I got hooked up with a great endocrinologist here in Albany, and away we go. And I'm on year 6 here. It was probably the most euphoric day of my life. Is the first day I took an estradiol pill, little blue pill, and it changed everything.
Well, first of all, my condolences.
Thanks.
Your wife, and thank you for sharing your story with us. I think it's so important. You said you started writing this book also a number of years ago, and now it's here. Congratulations on that, everyone. We're including links in the show notes and on our websites for you to pre-order your copy. It comes out on September 16th. Based then on your life story, competing in D1 and coaching, and now we have the great issue of our time, which is not the economy, which is not climate change. It's trans athletes. Who knew?
Right. Less than 1% of the population, but whatever.
Know, right? And we have more attention to that than anything else happening in the world today. I guess then, and it's a huge question, and there's so many different areas that I can go with this. And I do want to ask you also about UPenn, because my jaw is still on the floor about what UPenn just did to one of their alumni. But can you start by giving us your reaction to everything that's been going on right now?
It's the first thing that comes to my mind is the hate. Mm-hmm. It's all about hate. It's not about women's sports, because if all these people cared that much about women's sports, they would really bulk up and make women's sports a lot more equal than they do with the men. And so that's one thing. Now, as far as the sports and the competition and different things like that, I know what it did to me. Now, not the best scientific study, because I'm later in life. I stayed fairly active and stuff, but I was later in life. I wasn't in my, I wasn't competing. But I know what the spironolactone did to me. Like, I know what it did to my muscles. I was definitely more soft. I was definitely more, my muscle mass was decreased significantly, and especially after a couple of years. And I think you mentioned Penn and Leah Thomas, if I'm not mistaken, she had been suppressing for 2 years, mm-hmm. and the rule said you only needed one. Mm-hmm. And then we had a COVID year, so I think there was some things, some people waiting and what around. But she was there. The rules were there that said she can do it, and she followed them. Mm-hmm. And she won one of those NCAA mm-hmm. medals. The other two she didn't win. Mm-hmm. And yet the person that is just has her own industry right now as far as trying to, knock trans women out of sports altogether, is tied with her for fifth. Mm-hmm. So if Leah wasn't even there, she still would have been in fifth. She'd have gotten the same trophy whether Leah was there or not. And so, and first of all, my heart goes out to Leah. All the bullshit she put up with through, leading up to that, all the media attention, all the just so much, just trying to pound on her, and God, the bravery and the guts and the strength it took to just go do that, it was amazing. Mm-hmm. And I know the comparison everybody comes up with is, Michael, she's bigger, she's this. Well, you know what? There's men that are bigger than other men. Like Michael Phelps has something, apparently with his system that he can process lactic acid, quicker, this or that, so he and we marvel at that, hey, freak amazing. But when it's women, no. And now it turns into, you got short hair. Mm-hmm. You got short hair. You must be a man, and get out of this bathroom. People are having to show their breasts to get out of a bathroom just so that they're not. It's insane right now, and it's there's people with no, there's just nothing behind it. There's nothing scientific. There's nothing behind any of this that says, hey, you're legitimately in the wrong here. We're not in the wrong. I do think that, I mean, I will say this, there are certain sports that I do think that you should suppress your testosterone. I think that it means something. I know what the estrogen did to me.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think after, a couple of years, and the problem is NCAA, you don't have that many years. Like 2 years is probably half your career for most of the sports. Now it's hard to even tell because we've got the NIL stuff, and you've got it's almost going to be it's pretty lucrative to stay in school now, and take a fifth year or take a sixth year, whatever. And so that's a little different, but it's really the people. Not one athlete is transitioning, changing their whole body, risking losing their family, all their friends, all the ridicule and the spotlight to win a medal, to win first place. They're not. No one has done that. Like they just don't do it. They don't put on a skirt or a women's suit and do it. And so they're just not. And you know what else isn't going on? Trans women doing anything in the bathrooms.
I have to fit in one final break here.
Okay.
Lots still to get to with Brianne Brinker, whose new memoir comes out on September 16th. You're listening to The Gailey Show on AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk where facts matter. More soon.
So is this one going to be shorter, John?
Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. We are coming up on the top of the hour. My guest is Brianne Brinker, whose new memoir, Skating Out of the Vault, comes out on September 16th. Brianne, okay, so for high schoolers, particularly let's look at Minnesota, where we are based. Trans athletes in high school have been participating for like 10 years without incident. Both, there was nobody going, oh, this is an unfair advantage. Right. And also there were zero issues in changing rooms, in locker rooms. And now suddenly, they're everywhere. And the example that I've been trying to use here on the show is I'm like, okay, women's basketball players, like the average height is 6'8". I'm like, okay, in Minnesota, like in Ely, Minnesota, if you've got a girls basketball team and the majority of the the young women are between 5'10", 5'9", and 5'11", and then suddenly a future WNBA star walks in and she's 6'4", she is going to have huge advantages.
That's the way it goes.
Girl. She's going to be taller. She's going to be faster. She's going to have more muscle mass. And it's like, okay, well, that's okay. And, having a trans woman is not okay in the sport. There are so many, and you were bringing it up before the break, there are so many instances the science does not support their position. Yeah.
And they don't read the science, John. They don't read the science. And I had the opportunity to go speak and I went to oppose a bill in the Ohio State Assembly a few years ago. And they same thing. 10 years, they had the same rule out there, I think 10 or 11 years, and they had no issues. Nobody's running away. Nobody's winning those medals. Nobody's doing any of that. Yet now all of a sudden somebody got to a politician, and all of a sudden it's a crazy mess. And first of all, hats off to those kids that went in there and spilled their guts to these people that half the room wouldn't even look up, wouldn't even listen. And when they did, there's one that kept trying to badger and bully the kid. And it's amazing. These kids, just the bravery, it was just amazing. And, but they're not reading the science. They're not reading any of it. They don't even want to know. And it's just the political pawns. And
I'm glad you used that word, because you work in higher education, and I am just I was a chief diversity officer for 2 community colleges, and I am stunned at what universities are doing, particularly UPenn. And I think the president of UPenn needs to be professionally shunned. The board needs to be fired. To do that, when you're sitting on a $20 billion plus endowment and you're allowing yourself to be extorted by propaganda and a political party for a few $100 million, and to do that to one of your former students, and Brown College president, I'm looking at you too, where now she's touting about academic freedom. We still have that. I'm like, no, you don't. You are
Columbia.
now allowing propaganda throughout your entire campus, with the exception of like 4 classrooms. Yeah. I mean, what is your, as a person working in higher ed right now, I mean, how are you navigating the absolute fecklessness of higher education administrators?
Well, I mean, when I look at those situations, it's so gutless to be able to do that. I mean, to this person brought whoever. UPenn sports they're not the top of everybody's tongue, like they're not the biggest, team in the country. They're not the biggest school. That there's a lot of notoriety there, but to do what they did and just capitulate to the whole thing is disgusting. I can look at, from my end of it, I think that, our school's been terrific so far. They said we're not doing anything differently unless the laws make us do something differently. But if it's so far, that hasn't happened. But there's other schools too. Columbia has done the same thing, and for a lot of other things. It's just not just, and it's just, come on. I mean, I'm speechless, to be honest with you. I just don't understand, like you say, the amount there. And if all of those Ivies would just say F you to that, we're doing what we're doing, because and we wouldn't have any problems. I just don't get unless they're on the take. I don't know what else to say. I don't understand it, and because I don't know why they would be that scared. That's why I guess I'm not in that world, but I don't know why they'd be that scared, to be honest with you, John. I don't understand it.
When you're sitting on $20+ billion in an endowment, you'd think you'd have some resources for a law firm. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just having worked, and I know I worked at a community.
A lot of alums.
But it's absolutely stunning to me what they're doing right now. And unfortunately, we're coming up on our time here. The book is Skating Out of the Vault. It comes out on September 16th. We've included links in the show notes and on our webpage for today's episode on am950radio.com and heartlandsignal.com for you to pre-order your copy. Brianne, how can folks follow you for any readings that you may be doing or book tour type events?
AuthenticallyBrianne.com. That's a website. It's AuthenticallyBrianne.com. One word.
Perfect.
And it'll have book readings and different things and podcasts like this, things like that. So that's where it's at.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Brianne, for being with us here today on the Gailey Show.
I appreciate the time. This was awesome.
Definitely. Likewise. All pleasure's all on our side. And thank you at home or in your car or in the gym for listening today. Up next on WCPT 820 is Choose Views with Richard Chu. On AM 950 Radio, it's the Matt McNeil Show. And stay tuned after that for Native Roots Radio. Then at 10 p.m. Central, step into the unknown with Greg Bakken on Ghost Box Radio. You can stream our show everywhere you get your podcasts or at youtube.com/@thegailey show. You can see my smiling face every day. You can also connect with us on Blue Sky. We are at thegaileyshow.org on Blue Sky. Also, you can go to am950radio.com to sign up for the station's newsletter where you can get more about our show and all of the progressive news and talk on the station. Just go to am950radio.com and sign up there. And until tomorrow, same time, same place, keep it queer, America.